All right. I hope this is a refuah for Yaakov ben Bassa and all the cholim of Klal Yisrael. In addition to that, I hope the shir gives the soldiers divine protection, the hostages freedom, and all of Klal Yisrael safe in Eretz Yisrael throughout the diaspora. Kevin has a dedication.
Two. Yeah. Two. For Yehoshua ben Shulamit and for Arya Leib ben Leah. Okay.
Excellent.
Just a short idea. When you start, you're going to start first.
I'm happy if you start.
Just a short idea. I mean, I just walked in a few minutes ago. Okay, so just one thing on kashrut that I remember. Damon, please correct me if I'm not accurate. So one of the things we're not allowed to, in terms of kashrut, is we cannot eat animals that are predators, like lions, tigers, Tasmanian devils, that type of animal, because we may the bad midot that this animal has affects us, and that's why if animals such as cows, sheep, goats, and the like, those mammals that chew the cud and have split hooves are not violent animals and don't have a violent temperament. And I think that may be one of the reasons that we only eat those types of animals. Damon, can you confirm this?
Yeah, I think it's funny enough, not only a Judaic concept, but it's a concept amongst many cultures that which you consume, you inherit, meaning that if you surround yourself with negative and aggressive people, if you eat the flesh of predators, if you imbue yourself with negativity, it's going to have an impact. And what generally you do, it's interesting, the Red Indians, particularly the Cherokee and the Sioux Indians, basically would feel that what you are actually consuming, you take their life force on. And they'd actually give thanks to the animal for giving its life for its own sustenance. We give thanks to Hashem, but the concept is similar, that you inherit the life force and that spiritual strength and physiological strength from that which you consume. And for sure, I mean, the question arises is that you can obviously have herbivores, you can't have birds or animals of prey, etc., or predators. So you completely correct. The only thing I want to ask is that there are, I think, larger fish with fins and scales that are predatory fish. And there was just a question I wanted to ask on that note, but because fish aren't shechted in the normal manner, maybe it's not considered taking the same amount of sentient life, because fish don't have frontal lobes and they don't have the same sort of development that maybe a dog has. Like a fish doesn't have loyalty. It's got a 3-second memory like a goldfish. But a dog, for example, where they eat dogs in China, are man's best friend. They've got personalities, etc. So I think it depends on the level of sentience. All right, we're going to start.
And Damon? No, and also that, think of it this way. What would you rather take on, a lion or a lamb? I'd rather go for the lamb. I want to eat something and not have something eat me.
I don't blame you, actually. I don't blame you.
Think about it. If we took on the predators, it's like a 50-50 chance. I'm going to go for something that's not going to eat me. I got a much higher chance of getting it.
That's true. So you're basically saying you want to be a predator, not the prey. So therefore you're going to eat a predator.
Exactly.
Okay, well that makes sense to me too.
Yeah, I'm going to eat the prey, not the predator. I'm going to eat the prey.
And you want to prey, and you want to prey on the weaklings, not on the strong.
Exactly. And you want to pray to Hashem that the prey don't get you.
Oh, that's cute.
Just keep praying. That's all. You can't go wrong when you're hunting.
All right, guys, what we're going to do is let me just quickly share. I'm going to tell you the tonight dispute of where we left off. I'm going to do a 2-second summary, but now you should all know it. Okay. So, if one stole a lamb from a flock and returned it without notifying the owner, and it subsequently or it died or it was stolen, just hang on 1 second, guys. All right. Right. If one stole a lamb from a flock and returned it without notifying the owner, and it subsequently died or was stolen, the thief is responsible for it. What are we actually saying? We're saying that at the end of the day, when the animal is returned, if a thief has a change of heart or he knows he's going to get sued and he returns the animal, in that particular case, he has to notify the owner in certain circumstances. Otherwise, if it subsequently dies or was stolen and he did return it, the thief is still held responsible for the animal simply because no one knows it's been returned. That's if there is awareness from the owner. If the owner was not aware of its theft or its return and he counted the flock and found that it was complete, in other words, he wasn't aware that it was missing and the stock's take seemed legitimately normal, the thief is not liable for any future mishap because nobody assumes that anything's gone awry. If you remember, there were 4 opinions. The 4 Amoraic rulings, what constituted the proper return of a stolen article, which exempts the thief from paying for any harm it might subsequently suffer. So we're saying that if Reuven returns Shmuel's animal, he will be held responsible unless certain circumstances are achieved. So according to Rav's opinion, who was one of the Amoraim, is if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, its return requires the owner's awareness. In other words, the thief must tell the owner that the article has been returned. Okay? And if it was stolen without the owner's awareness, the owner's counting of his possessions exempts the thief from liability because all is in order. So the dissenting view always of Rav Shmuel, who says when the article was stolen with the owner's awareness or without his awareness, the owner's counting of his possessions exempts the thief from liability. And what we're basically saying there is whether the owner is aware or unaware, as long as it's rectified by the time stock take is done or by the time the money is counted, in that particular case, all is well. According to the opinion of Rav Yochanan we went through yesterday, is that if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, his counting of his possessions exempts the thief from liability. Because if he's aware that it's missing, once he does a stock take, he's got to be aware that it's been returned, and that would exempt the thief from further liability should the animal then die in the owner's possession or go missing again. If it was stolen without the owner's awareness, even counting is not necessary because, according to that approach, if it goes missing and you don't know, and you do the stock take and everything seems legitimately there, you're not aware and you're none the wiser, and that's fine according to Rav Yochanan. Rav Chisda has got a different opinion, particularly to Rav. In fact, it's opposite. So if the article was stolen with the owner's awareness, his counting of his possessions exempts the thief from liability. But if it was stolen without his awareness, it requires awareness. In other words, the thief must tell the owner that the article has been returned. And Rava gave the opinion of Rav Chisda that the reason why, if the owner was not aware, awareness is required, is because now that the animal has been separated from its flock, it's more liable to wander off in the future, and therefore we can't have that. So the owner has to be super vigilant in order to give the correct sort of supervision. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the rest of the Mishnah. It was those 4 Amoraic opinions. But the Gemara suggests that those opinions have a Tanaic precedent. So the Tanaim came before the Amoraim. The Gemara is saying, let us say that this matter was debated by the Tanaim in the following brisa. If one steals a sheep from a flock or a seller from a purse. So there are 2 different types of theft. The one is the theft of an article or goods, and the other one is theft of money. And in that case, he should return it to the place from which he stole. In other words, the thief is released from responsibility for the stolen item as soon as he returns it, even if he does not notify the owner. And these are the words of Rav Ishmael. But Rabbi Akiva says the awareness of the owner is paramount and is required. So the thief must tell the owner that he's returned the item. So the scholars who drew the analogy between the two disputes assumed that everybody, when we say everybody, the two Tanaim, Rav Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, agreed with Rav Yitzchak. For Rav Yitzchak said a person is in the habit of touching his purse all the time to make sure his money is secure. So what does that mean in English? He counts the money in his purse. According to Rav Yitzchak's observation, it can be assumed that the owner counted his money soon after it was stolen and was aware of the theft, and that he counted his money soon after it was returned and found all the money to be present. That's according to Rashi. So he does a regular counting. So now, does the Brisa not deal with the seller? A seller is a form of currency, like a coin, that was stolen with the owner's awareness. And they, Rav Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, the Tanaim, are disputing the issue debated by Rav and Shmuel. So just to reiterate, that Rav Yishmael adopts Shmuel's view that even if the owner was aware of the theft, once the thief has returned the stolen item, he's exempt from liability as soon as the owner counts his possessions, whether it's money or sheep, and finds them all accounted for. So explicit notification to the owner is not required. And by the way, guys, this is also the view of Rav Yochanan and Rav Chisda. Okay, if the owner is aware of the theft. As far as Rav is concerned, Rav says if the owner is aware, the return has to have a state of awareness for the owner. So obviously Rav Yishmael goes with Shmuel's view, Rav Chisda and Rav Yochanan, and Rabbi Akiva's view goes with obviously Rav's view. Okay, so now what we are saying is, let me just tell you how it relates to money, is that if you take in the case of a coin and not stock take of an animal stolen from a purse, the thief ceases to be responsible upon returning the coin, since obviously, guys, it can be assumed that the owner touched the purse and counted the money soon afterwards. So Rabbi Akiva, on the other hand, holds that with Rav, well, should I say Rav holds with Rabbi Akiva, because Rav came later, that if the owner knew about the theft, he must be told of the article's return. And even if the owner counted his money, immediately after the coins were returned, the thief has to remain responsible until he notifies the owner. That's according to Rashi. The Brisa doesn't deal with the lamb that was stolen with the owner's awareness, in which case Rav Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva are disputing the issue debated by Rav Chisda and Rav Yochanan. So guys, we've got two different issues here. We are talking about inanimate objects, at which Rav Chisda's view wouldn't come into play, because Rav Chisda's view is that you only have to inform the owner of the return if the owner is not aware, because an animal's behavior is transformed after the sheep is separated from the flock, that it's liable to wander off and requires greater supervision, whereas money is an inanimate object and requires no such awareness. So when it says the Brisa, and does the Brisa not deal with the land that was stolen without the owner's awareness, in which case Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva are disputing the issue debated by Rav Chisda and Rav Yochanan. So you've got to discern that a person is not in the habit of doing stock take for his flock of sheep all the time. It's quite an ordeal. And it can't be assumed that the owner is aware, because to count your coins takes 2 seconds. So although the owner presumably failed to count the flock after the lamb was returned, Rabbi Yishmael maintains that it suffices the thief to return the lamb to its place from which it was stolen. In other words, if the owner failed to do the stock take, that's the owner's problem, according to Rabbi Yishmael. So evidently agrees with Rav Yochanan, who rules with respect of a theft at which the owner was unaware. Even counting is not necessary, because if the owner wasn't aware it was missing, if it appears the animal on stock take, there was never almost an incident that had transpired in the mind of the owner. Rabbi Akiva, on the other hand, adopts the position of Rav Chisda, in the case of an animal, requires nothing less than the owner's notification does. So obviously it emerges where the owner knew of the theft. Rabbi Akiva agrees with Rav, which means that what's the remedy of the owner's awareness of the theft is to inform the owner when it returns. That's according to Rav. But when the owner did not know of the theft, Rabbi Akiva agrees with Rav Chisda, who said that the reason why you inform in that case is that the animal requires extra vigilance. So either way, Rabbi Akiva requires the owner's notification, and we see how it works both Rav Chisda and with Rav. And Rav Yishmael, his view is consistent with Rav Yochanan in both cases, that it suffices that the animal's returned, whether there's stock take or not, whether there's awareness or not. Okay, so the Gemara, so if it says, listen, are they disputing this issue debated by Rav Chisda and Rav Yochanan? The Gemara says, listen, it doesn't agree with the second part of the analogy of trying to make the Amoraim seem like the Tanaim, because Rav Zavid said in the name of Rava, in the case of one who steals a lamb from the owner's domain without the owner's awareness. All agree with Rav Chisda that notification is required. Okay? In other words, Rav Chisda obviously says that since the animal's habitual nature is changed and it's going to wander off from the flock, it requires greater supervision. And therefore, all the Amoraim agree in that particular case. They're saying it's possible, according to Rav Zavid. But it could be saying that more from a Tanaic point of view, because we see that not everybody agrees with Rav Chisda. So we're saying that Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva would agree in that case because the animal's behavior changed, there would be notification, but not in the case necessarily of coins. So this is where the dispute comes across, that Rava Zavid said in the name of Rava, in the case of one who steals a lamb from the owner's domain without the owner's awareness, they agree with Rav Chisda that notification is required. And Rav Yishmael and Rav Akiva, who are both Tanaim, disagree as to whether the custodian who stole an animal that was entrusted to him from his own domain may return it to the place from which he stole it without notifying the owner. So it seems as though this issue of Rav Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva is mainly in a disagreement with regards to custodianship. I'm going to explain what this means. So Rabbi Akiva holds that custodianship has terminated and the owner himself must be notified. So the Bryce is referring to a custodian who was entrusted with a flock of sheep, and he separated one of the animals from the flock with intent to steal it. He planned to exempt himself from the custodial liability by claiming that the animal has been lost, stolen by another person. So this is the theft of an animal. It's different to a robbery, okay? And the owner isn't aware. He's assuming that maybe the animal was hunted by a predator, in coming to Kevin's argument, or the fact that somebody stole it. And Rav Chisda maintains that the thief must give explicit notification of the animal's return. So we want to know the Tanaic view. What of Rav Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva? What do they say? So a custodian normally represents the owner. What is a custodian? Is given authority by the owner to look after that particular asset. And his knowledge of the animal's theft and return should be equivalent to that of the owner's knowledge. So in an ideal situation, the custodian should represent the goals of the owner or the person paying him for his custodianship. And if he's not taking money, certainly in that case, the goals of his friend. In other words, looking after his friend's item. So in this situation, though, Rabbi Akiva reasons that as soon as the custodian stole one of the animals, the owner ceases to trust him and revoked his custodianship, and therefore is not acting in unison with the owner. So Rabbi Akiva holds that the custodianship has terminated, and thus the owner himself must be notified. So the question is, well, if the owner is disapproving of the custodian's behavior, he is already notified. So what Rabbi Akiva is saying is that might not know, but what he's saying is if he was aware that the custodian tried to steal from him, he would certainly terminate the relationship. It would be implicit that they would no longer be on the same page because the interests diverge at that point. So in that situation, Rabbi Akiva reasons that as soon as the custodian stole one of the animals, the owner, in principle, whether he knows or not, would cease to trust him, and had he known, would revoke the custodianship. So by default, because that would be the owner's wish. So therefore, the fact that the erstwhile custodian knows of the animal's theft and the return is irrelevant, it's the owner himself who must know of these matters. So if the theft is committed without the owner's knowledge, the thief is required to inform the owner, whether it's Rav Chisda or Rabbi Akiva. Okay, and that is a different opinion to Rav Yishmael, who holds that the custodianship has not terminated, and his awareness of the theft and the return suffices. So basically, since the custodian still stands in the place of the owner, his knowledge of the animal's theft and return is the equivalent of the owner's knowledge. Okay, so what we are basically saying is that according to Rav Yishmael, if the owner isn't aware, or he is aware, it doesn't matter. If the custodian does right and returns the animal, there's no need for the owner's notification. It's enough that he notices nothing has gone amiss. So, in the case of a theft that becomes known to the owner, Rav requires the thief only to notify the owner of the article's return if the owner's aware. So it's measure for measure. Whereas Shmuel and the others rule that it suffices for the owner to count his possessions, to either count his money or do stock take of the item and find them all accounted for. So the Gemara suggests that the Tanaim and the following brisa disagree over the same issue. Now, what issue is that? Let's say that the question of whether accounting exempts a thief from responsibility is actually a matter of Tanaic dispute, because it was taught in the brisa concerning one who robbed his fellow and later included the worth of the stolen article in a sum he paid the victim for some other reason. So what are we actually talking about there? Is like, for example, after committing his crime, the robber bought something from the victim and he felt bad, and when he paid for the purchase, he added the amount he previously stole to the payment of a legitimate purchase. Okay? And he did this because he was embarrassed to return the stolen property openly. So he wanted the owner to be aware that when he left, without him being screamed at or accosted, that the rectification took place because the money was returned both spiritually and legally. So all he did is he might have bought an item for 100 Rand and he gave him 300 Rand. And the owner had an awareness that 200 Rand had been stolen previously. He didn't know who it was. And he assumed that this person that purchased it made good on the previous theft as well as paid for the new transaction. Okay, so I'm using that obviously as an example. So, concerning one who robbed his fellow and later included the worth of the stolen article in a sum he paid the victim for some other reason, it was taught in one brisa. According to one opinion of the Tanaim, he has fulfilled his obligation to return that which he stole and is no longer responsible for it. But it was taught in a different brisa, he has not fulfilled his obligation. So we're saying, guys, what is it? If you return money and you add it to an existing purchase because you want to do it where you don't have to come in a conflictory interlock with the person you stole from, do you fulfill your obligation or not? There's two conflicting brises. So the scholars who made the analogy between the two disputes assume that everybody, in other words, both brises, agree with Rav Yitzhak, who said, a person is in the habit of touching his purse all the time to make sure that the money is secure. In other words, they both assume that they agree that people count their money regularly, and that when they count it regularly, they know it goes missing, and when they count it regularly, they know it returns. So do they not disagree over the following point, that The one who says the robber fulfilled his obligation, in other words, in the first brisa, holds that counting exempts a robber from responsibility. In other words, the minute the owner counts the money, all is well and good, and if the money disappears after that point, the robber has fulfilled his spiritual and legal responsibilities, whereas the other opinion says that if he did not fulfill his obligation by adding the stolen money to the legitimate purchase, that counting does not exempt a robber from responsibility. Okay? Meaning, by definition, robbery is committed openly and with force, in which case the owner is certainly aware of his loss, and therefore the dispute between the prices matched that of Rav and Shmuel, and would go the opinion of Rav that in a state of awareness of losing his money, the thief would have to make him aware, not anonymously, but directly, that he returned the money. Okay, so these are the two opinions. So the Gemara rejects the analogy by suggesting maybe a different explanation of the dispute. So they said if you would subscribe to Rav Yitzchak's teaching that a person counts the money in his purse all the time, everyone in both brises would agree that the owner counted the return money and that the counting exempts the robber from liability, because it was a counting that made the owner aware that was missing and a counting that made him aware that the money was returned. But is it possible, the Gemara wants to know, that they disagree about Rav Yitzchak's teaching? What do we mean? Is that one master agrees with Rav Yitzchak, hence the owner presumably counted the money after it was returned, and the robber has thus fulfilled his obligation. But the other master, we refer to master as one of the Tanoim, disagrees with Rav Yitzchak accordingly, and that there's no reason to assume that the owner actually counted the money afterwards, because he's doing multiple purchases, and therefore the robber's obligation remains unfulfilled. Okay, so that's the one interpretation. The other interpretation is that if you prefer to say that everybody agrees with Rav Yitzchak, and they also agree that the owner's counting exempts a robber from responsibility, there's no contradiction between the two brises, because the first brisa, who rules that the robber has fulfilled his obligation, refers to where he counted the money and put it in the victim's purse, meaning that since the money is in his purse, the owner is likely to count it shortly afterwards and realize the robbery has been repaid, and therefore the robber is exempted from any further liability. But the second brisa rules that the robber has not fulfilled his obligation, is referring to a situation where he counted the money and put it in the victim's hand, meaning that the victim might have kept the money in his hand until he reaches his home, and in which case he might have thrown it in a container with multiple other payments, and therefore he would not know that the robber has given him any other money, and therefore the robber hasn't discharged his obligation. There's a fourth explanation of the dispute between the two brises, or if you prefer to say, both this brisa and that brisa refers to where he counted the money and put it in the victim's purse. In other words, the robber counted the right money extra that he stole and put in the victim's purse. Therefore, there's no contradiction between them, because in the second brisa, which rules that the robber has not yet fulfilled his obligation, it refers to where the victim had other money in his purse, meaning that he didn't know how much was in his purse, and therefore the minute it's diluted with other money, he has not fulfilled his obligation. Whereas the first brisa is that when the victim got the money in his hand from the robber and he put the money back in his purse, there was no other money to confuse the calculation, and the owner knew he was paid back. Okay, so that is where we're holding at the moment. I think we can end on this note. I know we've got 7 minutes. I know we're in the habit of ending a bit early, but then the next time is a new Mishnah, and I actually don't want to add a new Mishnah to this session. I'm sure you guys are all fatigued, and it's one of the last Mishnahs that we've got in the Gemara. It's the second last, so it deserves attention. Guys, we're ending 7 minutes early.
Can we do one
Damon?
Mishnah a day, or do we need 2 or 3 days to do a Mishnah?
No, because it's not just the Mishnah. We actually have to understand the Mishnah and the Gemara that subsequently arrives from it.
So how many
Mishnah.
dafs will each Mishnah be?
So listen, at the moment, just to put you in the picture, we're on 118b3. Okay? The Gemara ends at 119b4. So guys,
is that a
sorry,
full daf left?
119b5. So we've got one daf left to go. One daf
left. How long do you think it'll take max? 2 weeks max.
I think we'll be done by Pesach. That's realistic.
Yeah, hopefully.
When's Pesach?
It's on the Monday the 22nd.
Yeah, so let's make sure. Let's shoot for that. Perfect. No,
3
that's
weeks
even.
time.
You should be done before that.
Yeah, but I'm saying
But-
let's assume the worst. The goal is Pesach, and the goal is achieved.
Latest is Pesach. Yeah, we must be
The
done by
Damon.
Pesach. All right. Perfect.
What's
Just
the
one
rush?
comment.
Just as a matter of interest. You look twitchy.
What was that?
What's the rush? You look twitchy.
No. I'm not feeling great. So when I'm not feeling great, I'm always like this. I'm always twitchy.
Damon,
I'm just trying to work out a time frame. That's all. Sorry, I'm just not doing it in a good way because I'm not feeling great. When I'm not feeling great, I'm a bit irritable. So I just comes across. I
You just
apologize.
want to get it thrown away. Listen,
No, I wanted to ask you that
Good
question.
name.
I'm just irritable, so I'm asking in an irritable sort of way. So I like a twitchy way. I don't mean it like that. I wanted to ask the question regardless, like where are we? So I know.
Listen, we've
but I
done an
didn't-
amazing achievement in terms of when we started, and the fact if we finish before Pesach, that's a hell of an achievement.
So, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, okay, let's say the guy feels charota, the thief wants to return the stolen animal. If he knows it won't be that the owner may not know, he can go put it in his pen or either or comment, but make sure that it's returned or either or. Maybe he should contact tell the owner anyway, just to have peace of mind
So
for his own conscience.
Probably when you've got two Tanaic opinions, it's always good to go with the more stringent one. Therefore, you're covered by both. I agree with you.
Yeah, but just tell the guy anyway, because he'll appreciate it. It's just like Derek Eretz, I think.
One day, I think you can inform the person, but I think one would inform them anonymously because otherwise you might have future repercussions which the robber doesn't want. So I would suggest probably inform anonymously, not that your voice.
And then that the owner has knowledge, at least will know, even if he doesn't know who, if it's an anonymous source, that he can see that it's going to be returned or returned through a shaliach.
Absolutely. And a shaliach that doesn't know